Hey guys, Josh Collacchi here once again with RotoCurve.com, and we're going to do something different here. We're going to discuss some tips, some strategies, and kind of break down how we build cash lineups on FanDuel for NBA DFS. So let's get right into it. First things first, every day I do when I get to FanDuel, you're going to look for cash lineups, and the first thing you want to do, you're going to bring to your page. Now, of course, you see here the lobby, upcoming, live, and history, things of that nature. And what I do normally to start my cash lineups is I would just find just a cheap GPP that you may end up entering that day. So for the sake of the argument, we'll just go to the $2 GPP on FanDuel and just start here. Now from here, you can see all the games listed on FanDuel right here. We have a 10-game slate for this given day, which it is Wednesday, November 4th. So when I come here, first things I see are all these games. Of course, we can't really find out too much information about these games, and we'll talk about how we find information on players in a second. But this just gives you a price, all the guys' prices, gives you the gist of how the slate's going to play out. We see when they have one late game tonight, the rest of the games are at 9, 8, or 7 o'clock starts. And from here, a lot of people like to use this download players list, as you can see right here. What this will do is it'll give you a CSV file, which is an Excel file called comma separated values. And what that'll do is it'll bring you all the players, their prices, fantasy points per game, everything that you can see in this lobby, you can have in your Excel sheet. Now, for those of you that want to do that, you can go there and do ahead, but just for the sake of what we're going to be discussing for cash game lineups, it's not considered a necessity. Now, first things first, the thing I like to look at is which games you're going to be looking at, which are the games we're going to be targeting, and then we'll move from there. On RotoCurve.com, if you go to DFS Tools, you go down to NBA Game Theory. And I've discussed before in another video on how I like to use these tools. But the reason why I go here first is because it gives you an entire breakdown of these games. You're going to see the Vegas spread, the over-unders, then the game ratings. Now, what I usually like to do is I look at the game ratings first, and I can see that this game right here is not a game you'd like to target. And this would be Portland against the Utah Jazz. Now, just knowing the game, knowing the NBA, of course, with the numbers, the Utah Jazz are one of the slowest paced teams that we like to see, and you can see that with 57, the lowest pace for the given slate. I believe they're the lowest pace for the NBA as a whole. So you would use this as a tool to kind of figure out which games you'd like to target. The things I weigh the most in are the spreads, the over-under, and the pace. So a game like these Golden State Warriors against the Los Angeles Clippers has a massive over-under of 218. Spread 7.5, which means it could be a blowout for Golden State, but it's not likely because LA Clippers are actually a very good team as well, and the pace for both teams is high. So when you find the games you want to target, that means I'll be targeting very heavily this Clippers game, the Golden State game, Sacramento against Phoenix, Toronto, OKC, of course, and then teams that also have high paces like the Celtics, the Indiana Pacers have a really high pace, no pun intended there, as well this year. So when you find the games you want to target, first things first, when I go back to FanDuel and make my cash lineup, I would go here. Now, this is where all the magic happens, because in the highest game that you would look at, you want to find that best player in that game. Now, is it Stephen Curry going against Chris Paul? You can look at a whole bunch of different numbers. You can find those on RotoCurve. You can find those pretty much anywhere in Basketball Reference, and those kind of sites that you can use to find your matchups. RotoCurve also has DVP that you can use as well. So be sure to use all that information to kind of come up with an idea of what you want to use for players. Now, Curry against Chris Paul wouldn't exactly be a huge plus matchup because Paul is a good defender. Blake Griffin goes against Draymond Green. But let's just say, for the sake of an argument, building cash games, I wanted to have Steph Curry. He was my top guy. Make Curry in my lineup, and he's the guy I'm focusing around. And what I mean by that is when you're building your cash lineups, the guy that you want to focus around the most is going to be the first guy you put in your lineups. Everything else depends on his price. Everything depends on where his slot is in your FanDuel lineups. But if he's the guy you want, put that guy in your lineup first and then build around it from there. I like to look at guards last because there are usually so many different options. So that means I would start at center. You go to all and go to center. You can look at the prices here. Now, depending on what we put up each day, we like to listen some analyst picks, some situations we like to target. I like to use those as well. So just for this given slate that we're talking about here, when building your cash lineups, I really like Greg Monroe. So say I like Monroe and he would be my top center. I really want to get a good big man in that lineup because the difference between low priced or low scoring production and big man and high scoring is really different. So on FanDuel for me, I do like to pay up at center simply because you get a higher floor based on what your return is. And on FanDuel, there's only one center's position, so you want to make sure you don't mess that one up. From there, you can get 2 power forwards, 2 small forwards, 2 shooting guards, and of course 2 point guards. As we discussed before on FanDuel, you do get 60,000 with an average of about 6,700 per player. So you're going to have to find some cheap guys if you want these top tier guys, and we have those up for you each day on RotoCurve. But one quick tip that I can't stress enough is when you're looking at cash game players, try to pick starters if you can. Pick guys that play a lot of minutes. Pick guys that are in safe matchups, and you'll learn that over the course of the season which guys are safe and which guys aren't. What I mean by that is guys like Kawhi Leonard or be guys that are good for cash game lineups. Now, what do I mean by that? If you click on him on FanDuel, you go to their game log, you can see in the first 4 games he's played this season, 34, 36, 36, 34, 26, 35 minutes. If you watch the Spurs, you know that they like to limit their minutes on a lot of players, but Leonard is one of these guys that plays a lot. He gets a lot of points, rebounds. He can contribute in assists, blocks, and steals as well. If you look at his output over here as well, he has 4 games of over 30 points. Now, what makes him a cash play? Another guy a GPP play. Now, what we mean by this is you scroll down, guys that have higher upside but tend to struggle a little bit in terms of being consistent, or players that score a lot, like CJ Miles, like Otto Porter. So if you click on Miles this season, look at his game log. He has 4 games where he scored 23, 22, 15, and 15. Now, none of these games have been very impressive, but if you look at how he scores, the first game against Toronto, he scored 18 points, but only had 1 rebound, 1 assist, and 3 steals. That means this guy's really not contributing that much in any other category other than scoring, and that makes him more of a GPP play compared to a cash play, because in cash games, you're looking for guys that score in many different ways and get a lot of minutes, which Miles, as you can see, his minutes have fluctuated. Another good player to look at, another kind of player, is a guy that I like to look at for cash games a lot, and that's Nerlens Noel. Now, he comes back to a guy that scores in a many variety of ways, which makes him a good play in cash games. You can see his minutes are all up. He's played 33, 36, 35. But look at this, contributing points, rebounds, assists, blocks, and steals. This means you're going to get a low or a high floor for a guy like this. And I can't stress that enough in cash games, because you're looking for people that have higher floors. You're looking for people that contribute in many different ways, not like CJ Miles, but more like Nerlens Noel. Now, you may have noticed that a lot of these guys I like are really are higher priced because they're safe and they produce a lot. That's exactly what we're looking for cash. But in these cash games, you're going to want to find players that are starting that are cheap. And if you can get those into your lineups, it doesn't matter about their ownership percentages, because for cash games, you're looking for guys with higher floors and you're looking for point output. Now, for this given night, there is a point guard by the name of Michael Carter-Williams that plays for the Milwaukee Bucks. You see here, FanDuel, it says game time decision. He is actually out tonight. That means Jared Bayless is going to start in his place and play a lot of minutes. You go down to Bayless and look at that. It's just 3,500. Put him into your lineups, and what I mean by this is even though he's 3,500, and if you look at his game logs, his minutes have fluctuated a little bit, and he doesn't really do much else other than one possible category. But you have to remember, these are with games where Michael Carter-Williams has played. Bayless has started. He's played shooting guard for the most part for the Bucks so far this year. But considering he's going to start at just 3,500, he's going to play a lot of minutes. These are guys you want to look at for cash. And because most of these guys, you see that if they're very cheap, they usually aren't scoring many points very often. But when they do start, and this is, I think, the most important part of NBA DFS, finding those cheap players that are starting, that are filling in for injured players. And a player like Jared Bayless does this. So be sure to keep an eye out. For all the news that comes out. You can find news outlets all over the place on the internet for the NBA. Keep an eye on that news, because if there's a cheap player like Bayless that gets into your lineup, look at how much he contributes to the value. If you remove him, you have 41,000 left, and this is with Curry and Greg Monroe for an average of 5,800. You put a guy like Bayless in, who is a safe play, considering he's starting at that price. The average price per player raises at $400 per player, and we still have 5 or 6 players left to fill your lineup. So it's a really big thing for cash games. If you can find that top player you like, which for me would possibly be a guy like Greg Monroe, find a cheap player like a Jared Bayless, then you can find any guys in the mid tiers, which I think is another point for cash games that I want to talk about. So if we go to small forward, the guys in the mid tiers are usually the players between 5,000, price between 5,000 and about 7,500. Usually you can find players in this section that have been not necessarily stars, but they just put up solid points. A guy like Al-Farouq Aminu is a perfect example. So far this season, he's played 4 games. He has over 30 minutes in each game. He's scored an average of about 13, 14 points per game. He's grabbing about 8 rebounds per game, and he contributes in the blocks and steals department as well. If you go over to fantasy points, he's had 26 or more in his last 3 games. He's averaging 27 FanDuel points per game. And this is exactly what you need in your cash lineups. You need a safe guy that plays a lot of minutes, doesn't cost that much, and can contribute in many different areas. And that's what I mean by a safe guy. So basically wrapping up what we like to use for cash games, pick guys that are safe, pick guys that have value like Jared Bayless, and don't try to go for guys that have very low floors but very high ceiling, because in cash, we're just looking for a certain point scale, which for me on FanDuel is try to get about 270 points, which should cash in most cash games, and that brings you to an average of about 30 points per each player. And for their total of about 60,000, you're looking at around 4 times value for their salary plus 10 points. So a guy like Bayless, 3,500 times 4 would be around 14 fantasy points, plus 10 would be 24. So if his value is 24 FanDuel points, you're going to get that from the rest of the players as well. That'll bring you to a very nice score. In cash games, get these guys like Aminu, get the big center you want, like a Greg Monroe, and then find some other top matchups, whether it be Steph Curry, whether it be guys like James Harden, whoever you can fit into your lineups that are very cheap or very not cheap, but very reliable. And if they can fit into your lineups well, you're going to be looking at a good cash lineup on FanDuel because, and this is an old adage I like to use, I like to pick the guys that aren't going to get 0. Now, that sounds like an obvious thing, but there are some players that just either put up 50 or put up 10, like CJ Miles. So stay away from those guys. Find players to get a lot of fantasy points in a lot of different ways, and you'll be well on your way in cash games on FanDuel. If you have any questions, be sure to shoot any questions over in the forums. You can find me on Twitter at Josh Collacchi, and I'm always on RotoCurve.com. So be sure to give me a shout. And if you have any questions about this, I'll be posting a GPP video as well. So that'll be a different set of instructions. So once again, be sure to go over to RotoCurve.com. All the tools are free. All the analysis is free. And you can find everything like this and more over there at any time. It's all free, so be sure to take advantage of it. Good luck, everybody.